Coherent gets 50 million chips for Texas NP expansion. Indium phosphide remains the choke point for every 800 gigabit and 1.6 terabit optic. Capacity added in Sherman creates a multi-year lead on transceiver yields. Broadcom and Intel now face pressure to file their own chips proposals inside the next 2 quarters or risk losing design wins at cloud operators. Robinhood cuts 10% workforce in restructuring. Feature releases slipped behind Schwab and Fidelity on several retail products last year. Trimming 290 roles concentrates remaining engineering hours on fewer initiatives precisely as trading volumes stabilize. Expect heavier reliance on outside vendors for compliance tooling by the second half. Britit. Phoenix Tailings secures $500 million Pentagon loan. China still processes over 80% of separated rare earths used in magnets. The Pentagon commitment gives U.S. magnet producers a domestic offtake partner and shortens their qualification cycles. Lynas will likely delay parts of its own Texas timeline once this facility reaches commercial output. Copia Automation raises $26 million for OT code platform. Manufacturing lines still run on brittle PLC code that lacks any real version control. Fresh Capital extends the sales cycle into brownfield sites where downtime costs reach 6 figures hourly. Siemens and Rockwell now need equivalent change management layers in their controller software, or they lose the traceability segment. Pattern Group files $168 million secondary offering. Large shareholder distributions at this scale usually precede a re-rating rather than follow one. Unwinding $168 million in stock puts more supply into a market already digesting earlier venture exits. Retail holders should watch order book depth closely over the next 2 quarters. Rivian cuts hundreds of jobs post R2 launch. Service teams shrink right as the first R2s reach owners. Rivian is wagering that its latest model will require fewer interventions than earlier vehicles, or that it can no longer afford to grow support staff proportionally. Buyers away from major markets will see service response times stretch within 6 months. The direct-to-consumer model now carries a clear test at higher volumes without restrict. Patari Orbanus will post-operational bris opcharen before the rest of the wait. Camry withdraws 6 million won sank the OT dalal sheet. Small Chinese industrial companies continue dropping U.S. listings when audit and legal overhead eats the entire raise. Camry's move follows 3 similar withdrawals already this quarter. Those issuers now look to Hong Kong timelines or private capital that avoids prolonged proportion consolidation moves rather than pure organic expansion. Caseworthy operates in state and local case management where small tuck-ins stay available. Expect the new investor to push at least 1 acquisition inside 12 months so revenue reaches the scale both sponsors require before any exit talks or additional rounds surface. Qualcomm reportedly eyes tense Torvund acquisition. Rivals in the mobile chip space are already recalibrating term sheets after seeing the reported range of 8 to 10 billion. Tense Torrent's RISC-V architecture would give Qualcomm leverage in data center sockets that its own Nuvia acquisition has yet to fill at scale. Expect ARM licensees to accelerate their own custom core investments within the next 2 quarters rather than wait for the combined roadmap to prove out in volume deployments. DeepSeek closes massive China funding round. Backers sized this round around manufacturing commitments rather than typical research milestones seen in prior external rounds. Tencent gains preferred hardware access that squeezes availability for competing platforms well into 2026 and beyond initial deployment. Smaller operators must now secure alternative supply contracts quickly or face higher costs once priorities shift inside the new coalition. Salesforce acquires Fin for $3.6 billion. Support agents lose another reason to maintain separate workspaces once the data flows into existing Salesforce consoles. This forces Zendesk to match the integration depth quickly or lose ground on mid-market deals that prioritize unified agent desktops. Contract reviews later this year will show whether that bundling sticks under direct comparison. Square files for US IPO. Growth numbers in the filing reveal utilization rates climbing ahead of new facility builds across primary markets. Equinix will likely see enterprise RFPs migrate toward flexible providers until it can update its own expansion timeline. Lease discussions in secondary markets should turn more competitive by early next year as capacity tightens. Snap unveils new AR glasses. The price point lands well above current developer editions from every other player. Developers gain early waveguide access that Meta has kept tightly controlled so far. That timing could force Meta to open select partner programs ahead of schedule to retain mindshare in the AR ecosystem before broader shipments begin. AliWatch reports multiple NYC rounds. Term sheets from these rounds quietly tightened liquidation preferences across the board. That structure hands investors full payout priority before founders see upside, a clause that will push at least 3 of the reported companies into compressed exit windows by late next year. Local angels who co-invested now face pressure to match those terms or lose allocation rights on follow-ons. Keysight Technologies updates investor outlook. Services attach rates came in 4 points below internal targets in the latest update. That shortfall signals enterprise accounts are stretching existing equipment cycles rather than adding maintenance contracts, which will squeeze Keysight's operating margins unless product mix shifts toward higher-end oscilloscopes within the next 2 quarters. Competitors are already adjusting their renewal forecasts downward in response. Keys Provision deploys Ericsson private 5G networks. Private network customers are securing dedicated spectrum that locks out public capacity reallocation for the full contract term. Rivals without equivalent Ericsson integration will lose ground on factory automation bids, where latency SLAs now favor the early movers by at least 12 months. Verizon's footprint expansion sets the deployment cadence every carrier must match to stay in consideration. Insurers' shift strategy on core underwriting platforms are pulling in sensor data streams that legacy actuarial tables cannot process. Carriers completing the migration will cut claims leakage by 4 points on commercial lines inside the first policy year, yet agents still reliant on batch uploads risk losing placement volume to carriers that close bind faster. The gap appears in renewal negotiations starting this quarter. Wesco acquires Newark Engineering Group. Newark's liquid cooling reference architectures now sit inside Wesco's bid packages for North American builds. That addition shortens qualification timelines for hyperscale operators by 6 to 9 months and pressures remaining electrical distributors to secure comparable thermal partnerships before the next wave of expansion RFPs drops in early 2025. Several procurement teams are already listing the combined stack as preferred.